After high-speed thrills on the banks of Auto Club, it's a trip across the pond, and landing at Mugello is the iRacing IndyCar Open Series for the very first time. A high-speed, aerodynamic-dependent track that's going to challenge the drivers and really force them to fight for overtakes. It's going to be an exciting race, and we're glad that you can join us here on RaceSpotTV. Arjuna Kankipati joined alongside by Justin Prince as we get ready to go racing. And JP, I've had the pleasure of driving around this track in many an AI race, and I love it. And I'm quite enthused to hear how the drivers have been enjoying as well, getting ready for this race that lies ahead.
Yeah, today's going to be an exciting one to say the very least, because on multiple different platforms, this has always been a fan favorite, and very much to me as well, because the amount of flow you can have on the circuit, but also the amount of passing opportunities that can pop up at times at Mugello. It's great to have it now on iRacing, not only that, but also see how it works with these open wheel machines. These Indy cars going to have a lot of pace down that front straightaway, especially if they want to make some passes today. It's going to be fun to see which drivers adapt the best.
It is going to be a 29-lap affair. Drivers, of course, required to use multiple compounds of tires, so it's going to be interesting to see primary and the alternate tire, how that all plays out. We're 2 weeks now into the schedule, though, and boy, what a ride we've got ahead of us. Sonoma, Texas, and then Long Beach to see us to the end of the first half. But with 2 races in the books, not really much that you can draw in terms of championship form, but really right now, it's not too unexpected to see those at the front. Phil Kraus, Adam Blocker, Hamilton Akabuwizi, Connor Harrington, Jacob Oster, and then Christopher Demerit. You've got, of course, Team i5G, the private label Team Hype, and Powerslide Motorsports all represented, and then John Bader, the Hydra-Race Geodesic Racing driver. The Satellite Racing Trio, Burrell, Hildegard, and Crane, and then Brandon Roseborough and Will Lyon. Of course, for the Indy Alliance Racing program, rounding out the top 12. Still a long way to go, and what a schedule they've got ahead of them, and what a field we've got in store for us here today, because JP, not only are we going to see all of the regular iRacing IndyCar faithful, they're joined by Agustin Canapino, fresh off his top 10 finish in the race, or non-points race, I should say, at Thermal Club. He's joining us, and of course, linking up with his IndyCar engineer in the real world, Adam Blocker.
Yeah, today should be a fun one for Canapino, because in final practice, he was 2/10 quicker than the entire field. In qualifying, already 2/10 quicker than the driver known for building houses in victory lane with Phil Kraus. The field looking extremely competitive among some of the top alliances, because you have Kraus, you have Blocker, you have Robert Malechka the third. We've seen great things from him. Connor Harrington you can throw in with Badefer, but also throw in the mix others like Brian Carey and company. Basically, if you followed a league race on the platform, you know exactly who's in the field. Very curious in some of the others towards the back half who try and rise, though, like Lucas Ladano, who's known to be in the IndyCar community as of late, and others like Olivia Hayward, who were able to sneak into this split, looking to see, can they get some spots towards the end of this one?
Olivia, I don't know if she's feeling too confident, but she's continuing just to get more and more up to speed with this Dallara IR18. You can see the cool conditions that the drivers have to deal with as qualifying has just come to a close. I think that's going to mean the alternate compound tire, softer in nature but less durable, going to be the preferred compound that drivers are hoping to use. But we're ready to go racing, and what a race that it should be. The first time we've made our way on over to Mugello. Let's find out how it's going to race in these Dallara IR18s. Agustin Canapino, quick in the real Indy cars. He's a winner in the iRacing Daytona 24 earlier this year as well. He knows how to do it in the sim. He'll lead us to the green with the 124.986. Phil Kraus was 2/10 off in the private label Team Hype, with the team sporting some new liveries as well. Adam Blocker then will line up alongside his teammate Rob Malechka with half a second between those front two rows. John Badefer, the Hydra-Race Geodesic Racing driver. That's Connor Harrington for company New York's own. 7th will Kevin Burrell, of course, racing from Japan, and then Brian Carey in the outside of row number 4. Brandon Roseborough and then Alan Broteau, 9th and 10th positions with Sam Carousala, and then Mitch Welker 11th and 12th. Back to 13th to find Rashad Craig, and then Michael O'Brien in the Madworks number 18. He was another driver wondering if he would sneak into this top split, but Will Weiser, Seb Alexander, Brad Newman, and Nicholas Sudik through the top 18, and then Lucas Ladado and Olivia Hayward at the very back of the 20-car starting grid. Now, they'll have a full formation lap with which to work, and it gives us time to try and understand the trends with which we've got to understand. And JP, you can see those conditions overcast in the air. I'm going to be wondering if some drivers elect to start on the primary compound tire and then switch to the alternates in the second half of the race and really push the tempo.
Yeah, that's something we were really talking about a little bit, expecting the alternate to potentially be a little bit quicker because of the colder temperatures, because remember, hotter the track temp, the more the fall off with the red wall tires. These drivers, a majority of which are electing to now start on that hard tire, are thinking that exact same mindset. You know who's not? Canapino, Adam Blocker, John Bader, the only drivers electing to start on the red wall tires to begin this one.
And so as they get ready to roll, we'll pull that up for you on the left-hand side of your screen. Again, full flying formation that's for them to get underway. 3 drivers all on the alternate, and interestingly, they're all going to be on the inside as well. So we'll see how it's a right-hand hairpin initially, and then it's a chicane. First left, then right. Let's see if that's going to give them the chance. And maybe you expect as well with these cool conditions, those tires are going to fire off especially well. But it does mean that, JP, at least we're going to get some strategy intrigue. It's always boring when you get everyone on the same strategy. At least this way, we'll see something split at least.
Yeah, and I think it's, like you said, interesting that they're all on the same line, but not with the same grouping when you consider things. But these power slide machines, majority of them up towards the front, I think are going to have a lot of power to try to overcome for much of the field with how it's looking like already, because they seem to be dialed in on the pace. But when we're talking about the flow of this track here too, it usually favors them, especially with drivers like Blocker we've seen in fixed series in the past, with Lionheart as well. This racetrack going to be important to have to be able to follow on some of the aero push and aero wash, especially when it comes to looking at some of these tight sections that you have to go quick left, right.
And we're wondering in terms of fuel, full formation, that probably isn't going to change that too much, but we're 17 laps or so in terms of no fuel save. I wonder if we are going to see a little bit of fuel save. We're heading into what is one of the most fun parts of the track, though, this middle sector. We jump on board with the 6 machine, the satellite racing entry of Kevin Durrell, and you fly first down. It's slightly off camber in some ways through a right-hander, then back to the left, and you've got the setup dialed in, which I'm assuming plenty of these drivers do in these colder conditions when you are going to have that little bit more grip to the surface as well. It's basically flat to the floor through the next 2 right-handers, Arrabbiata, and then you head off into the final sector of the lap when you actually have to get onto the brakes once again. This is where dirty air, though, JP, is going to be so frustrating.
Yeah, essentially in your full throttle, all it takes is the driver ahead of you to even push you into the dirt, and you're sliding into that sand trap here today. Gonna have to get that balance down, be ready to go. And as a result, though, with that near full throttle nature expected, that run up to turn 10 gonna be one of your prime opportunities before the start and finish line. The run through here. You also have that flow up to turn 12. I think we might see drivers trying to wrap the inside. Here's that complex of 10 and 11, but it's another Silvery Lane straightaway down with a bit of elevation back up for that right-hander you see up the road. That along with turn 15 as well as San Donato, the opening corner of the racetrack, going to be your best chances, I think, today.
I see Graham Sanders in the chat. He's cheering John Bader on as we ride on board with that HydroRace geodesic racing machine. And remember, we've got 29 laps lying ahead. It's a race that's only going to run around 40 minutes or so. I get the sense there's going to be plenty of sweat for the drivers to contend with. Now, we talked about straight lengths, one thing to keep in mind because of the way the push-to-pass system works in these cars. We're going to see most of those drivers elect to use it on the run out of the final corner, a long left-hand hairpin, and then on the run in towards that turn 1, climb up the hill. JP, put you on the spot. Who comes out on top?
I think on the spot right now, Augustin Canapino. Rearwood experience for the race car. Very solid when it comes to the sim. Williams Esports, I think you have to give it to Augustin Canapino. He's going to be difficult to even make a pass on, let alone try and overcome for the race win.
There's another HydroRace geodesic racing driver that thinks his teammate's going to rise to the top. That's Austin Young, but we're ready to go racing. Off and away goes the pace car. Canapino and Kraus on the front row. It's the first time we made the trip over to Mugello, and now with 29 laps ahead, Canapino stacks them up. It's a long hold, but the green flag's gonna fly. We're underway once again on a Monday night, and Blocker's inside of Kraus on the run up towards San Donato. Onto the brakes, 3 wide, they'll be behind. It's gonna be Connor Harrington that has to back out. John Bader on the alternate tires, trying to hold the inside, but here we go, up the hill and to the left-right flick, the first chicane we have to navigate through. Canapino's clear, Kraus back to second, and Malechka boxes out Bader, who gets in front of Harrington.
And Bennifer's having a hard time getting boxed in already. Had to get hard off the brakes and through the gas, actually, or reverse that thought process with how tight it's getting around this racetrack. Already some of that aero wash already coming into play of notice because of how tight a lot of these drivers have to play this. Many of these drivers might have some struggles trying to go side by side, especially in half this racetrack. They want to get the job done. Here comes Bennifer.
Here they come through Arbiata. Malechka makes the mistake, and Baderfer will pounce. Harrington slips through forward as well, but look at the margin Canapino has as they enter into the final sector. It's down towards turn 12 where MotoGP cars have their longer lap, where Blocker's going to have his look. He's not going to get the move done by any means. Birrell's now fighting and forcing Malechka to even lose more positions. He'll send it, though, around the outside. Brian Carey, his teammate's not going to force the issue. We'll come to the end of the opening lap with Canapino gone and sailing off into the race distance. That new livery for the private label team hype going to feel the pressure on the run towards turn number 1.
Already, I think it's going to be similar to what we've seen. Drivers with the red wall tires going to have the big boost. There it is right there. Nothing you can really do. No, you're on the fresher compound, or rather the faster compound when it comes to Blocker. Kraus already has to remember, we've seen this especially over the years, you have to think the long con. And in this case for Kraus and company, I think it's similar to what we've seen with the pull-out from Lechko already. Drivers are already knowing if they're on the red wall tires, they'll come back to you.
Riding side by side further back as Mitch Welker gets up in toward ninth positions. He's gained 3 spots on this start so far. Brandon Rosberg has dropped down 1. Not too much chopping and changing. You can see that on the left side of the screen. Remember, cooler conditions than I think some would expect with the amount of cloud cover that we have. And it's here through this long double right-hand complex where you can jump on board with the machines and you could see the amount of confidence they need. And that's where Malechka made his mistake a lap ago.
Yeah, the aero wash you talked about already. Because it's so full throttle in that part of the racetrack, keep an eye on that coming up in the next few moments here. You just get within a car length or two, it pushes you wide off the racetrack. You need to be able to stay on the pavement. As simple as that may sound, all it takes is one driver to push you wide because of that arrow, and you're going to end up kicking a bit of sand. That was the case for Malechka initially, and now for a lot of these drivers, it's just keep the flow going, get to the push to pass mark like this on the front straightaway. Pretty clear, though, Kraus does not want to let Baderfer to get any opportunity. He already preserved one compared to the rest of the field.
It's two ways. He doesn't want to let Baderfer pass. He also, I think, wants to stay as close to Adam Blocker as possible, because at some point those alternate tires are going to fall away. Already 1.9 seconds to the drivers behind, and so Phil Kraus finds himself separated out from those on the same strategy as him. You could just see, though, how much better on the run out of turn 3 Poggio Secco that Baderfer was able to get the power down out of Borgio San Lorenzo, though. This is the downhill braking zone down in towards Casanova. No love lost between these drivers up towards the front. Already Blocker starting to close the margin back to Agustin Canapino.
Yeah, pretty much near identical when it comes to pace and strategy, although I think Canapino has that little bit of an edge long run. See right there, for example, he's a little bit more heavier into the corner on speed, but even then, Canapino, because of how he's got the feel of this race car with the real-world experience, just seems to have the right time to throttle back up to where he's actually a net positive by a couple hundredths compared to what Adam Blocker's doing, with Blocker going more conservative entry. This is why exactly I said Canapino's going to be difficult to try and beat today. He's already on the defensive strategy when you think about a tire compound-wise later, but already when you're gaining at a 10th or 2 a lap like Canapino, this is a big trouble spot for the rest of the pack.
And while they're not fighting too much up towards the front, still not seeing Kraus and Baderfer ending up swapping around. They are starting to juke a little bit more towards the back end of the field, and to be more specific, back edge of the top 10. There's a look to the inside. Mitch Welker trying to make it 4 spots gained on Carey. His Power Slide Motorsports car can do nothing but watch the All-American iRacers with Turn 2 racing machines slip on through. Now, Rob Malechka up the road next is starting to lose ground to Kevin Burrell and Connor Harrington. Now, for these drivers, we mentioned that fuel saving might be a factor. Because it's so cold, JP, you have so much more grip, you spend more time full throttle, you end up burning a little bit more fuel.
I don't know if fuel per se is going to be the biggest of factors today, because you can make it on the one stop regardless. It's going to be more so, I think, what we've seen with the weight of the car and also how much fuel you have to put in the first place. That's going to be the big difference maker. I think we'll start to see, and why we're seeing the interval for the race leader drop now by about half a second this lap. If drivers want to hit the number for not only their optimal fuel number, but also their preferred setup number for how much fuel is needed for the final stint, and to be able to make sure you don't have to overfuel the race car, you're going to have to start saving. Canapino, I think, has gone into save mode with how blockers just reel him on in. You can tell with Canapino, he's lifting a bit on down the straights at least, not 100%.
Not sure if it's maybe also just a little bit of the tires falling off. Brian Carey now has to defend as Brandon Roseborough is going to pop to the outside. And this time defending the inside through turn one. But you can just see how much more speed Carey, if you break a little bit deeper. Roseborough's got the inside now for the next chicane. He gets the move on done, and Brian Carey maybe a slight cork in the bottle. Sam Carasala next in line to try and take advantage.
Yeah, and a lot of this is going to be down to the patience to be able to get a lot of these passes down. We've seen drivers like Brian Carey be very patient. Curious, though, on what we see from the 13 machine. That's one of those from Team Watson, that respective grouping. We've seen them do well a lot on the road course side, try and build their oval presence. Haven't seen personally as much of their IndyCar presence, though, but this is a team that, in theory, not only doesn't want to get ticks by the driver picture not being there, but also wants to be basically everywhere as a grouping.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is as well one of those fun corners, in my opinion. You could just see that elevation change. These Indy cars are so dynamic in nature. You watch these onboards, they kind of give you part of the perspective, but not all of it by any means. You really have to get to grips with the suspension. They're not like F1 cars, at least the older F1 cars. In some ways, they're probably more like the modern F1 cars, especially given ground effect at play in both of the chassis designs. So back towards turn one, no side-by-side this time around. I'm going to think as much as Sam Carasala is on the button, he's going to draw just that a little bit too late alongside, and Carey's going to jink drivers right and just hold off for the time being. Drivers further behind onto the button as well, as Carasala's going to force the issue up in towards turn two, but Carey, having none of it, holds the door slammed shut for the time being. There's Blocker now within half a second or so of Canapino as we get towards, halfway almost, towards the half mark of the fuel run.
Yeah, this race is just about flying on by, I will say, but no surprise, these two just staying in a line and working together. And you have to think Blocker has to be maybe in the ear of Canapino, because the rear wheel connection saying, no need to burn up all your stuff, you need gas after all. It seems like they're pretty much in sync on the strategy within that half a second buffer of the racetrack. And now it's just a matter of keeping drivers like Canapino calm, saying, you don't need to run away. We still have a pit stop, remember?
Yeah, no, it's also the case as well, though, that I know Adam Blocker is not someone that likes to be talky on the radio. I think this is one of the few races where they're actually talking. I can see Canapino, Andrew Kinsella, Rob Milechka, and Adam Blocker. I may be opening the curtain a little bit too much, but poor Brian Carey, I think he is feeling the pressure. He's the one power slide driver that's put himself into his own little world, is on the button right now as well, and just holding off Carasala with good effect as well. 7 laps in now, we're on to the 7th lap, I should say. Jump on board with Phil Krause as we ride around this track, and just watch the hands at play here, JP, how smooth they're trying to be. Don't really want to throw these tires around and really dig into their tire life.
Yeah, Phil Krause is actually doing this very well, not really handling the bumps too badly at all either, because the more it bumps around, the more it has what I like to call, for example, micro slides. That ends up scrubbing a lot of speed, and if anything, can really cook some of your tires. When you're able to get a smooth rotation to the wheel, it just helps you get that better one through. And it's also to where if you're doing it at a solid rate, not rapidly going 0 degrees to turn, time to turn 45 degrees into the corner, you're really much saving those tires compared to those who are trying to chuck it into the corner and try and throw it in, turn it with a lot of force in the middle of the corner.
I feel personally attacked here. You're describing my driving style. As some would say, I resemble that comment. You can see also, by the way, pit entries off the driver's right-hand side. It's not particularly a difficult pit entry, but it is somewhat high commitment. So And just keep that in mind. We may end up seeing a couple of drivers really try and force the issue on the run in towards that pit entry. You can see Blocker under fire as they head up towards turn number 1. Increasingly, Tower being lit up like a Christmas tree, and drivers trying to make moves. Here comes Carousala back to the outside as Team Watson Racing car. Just look at the commitment. Carey can do nothing but watch as it sails on through to 10th.
Now, I will say this with Carousala. He is somebody, when looking towards the background side, has been kind of on the rise on the open wheel side. If you remember, he was part of the Retro Series last year, right, Arjuna, for Lionheart, but also has already had multiple of his passes featured by iRacing as part of their top 10 list. He's very much rapidly picking up the tempo in the past 2 years, and here's one of the major things about improving as a driver. You've got to be competing in these races. That's the main thing that keeps being shouted at, whether it's stock car, whether it's IndyCar, whether it's anything. You're not going to get better if you're not racing the best of the best like tonight.
And, I mean, strength of field's relatively decent. Up front, we've got 4 drivers all above 7,000 I rating, although Phil Kraus just gets into that barrier because he is literally on the number, 7,000 exactly. I have the sense he won't be after this one, maybe going to be gaining just a few as we ride on board with Baderfer, running up towards the Turn 1 sequence once more. On the left side of the screen, let's show you the push-to-pass numbers, how drivers have been rationing out the usages. You can see Rob Malechka, who's now 2 seconds behind Kevin Burrell's, trying to close that margin by using one of those 10 allotments, but it's been relatively sparse in terms of usages. It's only the likes of Mitch Welker, down to 6 left in this race, that have really been forcing the issue.
I want to put a circle next to Kevin Burrell's pace, though, because he hasn't used any of the push-to-pass, as you mentioned. However, when it comes to Burrell, he's right now one of the quickest on average on the racetrack, averaging about 128.8 on the circuit. To do that just on raw pace is a very solid testament to what the 6 machine, I think, has underneath them, but also his own raw pace. Now he's going to need a few tenths of a second to be able to get to the rest of the pack, Arjuna. But he is right now close to this entire battle pack with Baderfer and company. In fact, just getting close to some of these choo-choo trains.
Not sure exactly what's happened, but this lap does seem as though Canapino is backing off slightly. Are we starting to see the cliff in terms of these red alternate compound tires? Again, the slightly softer, but also, you know, as much as they will give you a bit more grip, they'll wear just that little bit quicker as well. You are required to use both of the compounds. You have hypothetically a 17-lap fuel window, so they're feeling the pain now. They're maybe 3 laps or so away from being able to duck down. Harrington's closing as well. Keep that in mind. That car definitely starting to bridge the gap. 29.7 last time for Canapino. It was a 28.5. Battle though on for second. Kraus to the outside. Primary tires coming on strong, and 2 drivers that have fought so many times before fight once more, but Kraus forward to second.
That almost looked like Blocker saying, you want it so bad, go ahead. I'll come back at you later as well. Just quite simply playing the long game, saying, we've got to be careful with these tires. You are right, though, I think on the reds, on Blocker especially, he is struggling this lap. Baderfer seems okay-ish. Canapino's running away the second Blocker gets past, but Blocker seems to have destroyed his tires.
Yeah, not ideal. It's one of those things, though, I think you kind of have to do it. You cannot afford to back down and to really turn down the pace. I think we saw a comment in chat where Canapino broke the draft on lap number 1, and after that maybe slowed down once he was able to manage the tempo just that little bit more. You can ride with Baderfer in the bottom right corner of your screen as once again out of the long right-hando at Corintaio they sweep, and this left-right flick, I mean, it looks easy, but in these Indy cars, especially when the tires have started to wear, it's a struggle. It's not an F1 car with the amount of downforce they produce. Now, are they going to get onto the button this time by? You'd think at some point Baderfer is going to feel the need, the desire to want to go offensive, but no, Blocker goes defensive instead.
Yeah, just goes that extra little bit faster for the time being to build a buffer for now. But I think that kind of signifies you're talking about 17 laps of gas. We're 2 laps away from that mark. If you want to switch directly to that and just take as much as you need to end off the race on the gas. So I think Baderfer waiting and just a bit patient. Here comes the run though for the race lead. Kraus is starting to provide the pressure. Canapino ran away by 9/10, and then the red wall tires started to fall apart on his car.
So we're 10 laps complete. Where are we going in terms of pace? Canapino was able to bring it back to a 28.5, but you know, that's one poor lap and suddenly you're in the hole, and Harrington's got a sniff at the draft as well. So got 5 cars within just over 3 seconds, 6 cars just within, well, about 6 seconds or so. Don't count out Kevin Burrell. Justin's quite right there. Driver we've seen compete for the championship on occasion before. Now, Kraus closing that margin, but if he does think that there's a risk that these drivers are going to head down towards pit lane, well, I might be caught in 2 minds. Do you go for the move? Do you wait? Do you hang back? Knowing Phil Kraus, though, don't know how patient he's going to end up being.
You've seen Phil Kraus actually be one of those in a similar spot in the past. Try and be aggressive on the defense, especially a couple of years ago with the private label Team Hype banner. But look at that Christmas tree time for the top 4. Canapino is going full on snake. You can go full snake here. There's no pit entry lane to try and cross.
We're not at Indy, that's for sure. Kraus tried it. Oh, he sent it. Baderfer's going to have a look for 3rd as well. So keep this in mind. We're at that point where in the second pit cycle of the race, when the other drivers are on the alternates, maybe 11 laps, 12 laps or so, that's when they'll feel the pain. Blocker holds off the charge for the time being, but at the cost of a couple of tenths. He was super slow in the line that he had to run. Next time into turn 1, I'd be worried if I was Canapino. Surely you've got to come in.
There's the one risk, remember, where is he going to cycle in the pit lane? Because depending on what the traffic is, that might put him around, I don't know, Alexander, Sudik, Lodato, and if that ends up being a major factor, that could be the race decider. So there is the mindset too. Some people I think are going to be arguing, especially watching Lawn, saying, when do I pit? Do I wait until I know it's halfway? Where drivers like Michael O'Brien and company have had a history of just pitting straight at halfway.
Exactly. I'm loving this. This is great. And sometimes we have the longer 2-stop races. I think for this season, 2024 Season 2, we're going to only have 1-stop races for the most part. It doesn't mean you can't have interest and strategy gambles when you have these plays. Now, Canapino stays out. He burns yet another push to pass. So getting quite aggressive. He's gone through half of his allotted 10. He's going to really feel the pressure, though, on the run to turn 1. There goes Kraus to the outside. Can he build a house at turn 1? San Donato, long way around. Kraus gives it a good go, but Canapino will fight back. He'll give it the chance to try and sneak along the outside. But after the tires had worn off, Kraus takes the primaries to the race lead.
And now this is the big picture. Still have about 4 or 5 laps to go, maybe until the pit stop, until you're out of gas essentially for this run. Kraus can try and run away here, but others like Baderfer, interesting enough, just continue to stay boxed in here. Harrington has gotten within drafting distance, but nothing has really changed. Why do I say that? Well, he's been running 3.7, 3.9 seconds regardless of the fall off. Harrington just can't close.
He's closer now to the fight for 3rd than he really is, of course, for the fight for the lead. Watch the hands, still relatively calm and tame as they come towards the final couple of quarters. As mentioned, of course, you got the long lap where MotoGP went on the left side. Why do I bring that up? Well, I know this past weekend was a bit of a hot button topic for those in the world of IndyCar, whether they liked it or not. Some of the drivers said we should do Joker laps. Let's come to Mugello. We've got a built-in Joker lap. I'm just saying. Kraus, by the way, has gone, sailed away, and Canapino in response, I think, had no choice but into pit lane and followed in by Adam Blocker.
Not shocked whatsoever with the red wall tires. Have to come in with the fall off starting to hit as aggressively as it seems to be for the both of them. Now, just got to be able to push with those black wall tires here. Going to be a bit challenging per se, because here's the thing, they're going to be on full defensive mode the rest of the race. And we know Philip Kraus, he's been getting better and better, especially on the attack. This is basically his prime to be able to try and run away on the alternates.
I think we have to also now get a sense for Blocker and Canapino what the pace is going to be on the primaries. How much will they push at the start of the stint? They've come out in clean air, so there's no real concerns about running into dirty air. However, eventually they will end up closing to the back of a couple of drivers and have to work their way through. 1.5 seconds splits them. Of course, Canapino, as mentioned, has represented Williams Esports for going on now 5 or 6 years, so he's no stranger to the sim racing world, and great to have him here on a Monday night, coming off a weekend where he was rather busy behind the wheel of his IndyCar, and now back behind the wheel of a virtual IndyCar. Fight for sixth, it's on. Brandon Roseborough has gained three positions, so far today. Of course, two of those by virtue of the pit stops that we just had. Mitch Welker, Sam Carasala running behind and running relatively closely behind.
These drivers have stayed pretty well bunched together. A +5 for Welker, as you said. He's actually the only person with a live spotter. Michael Hurley working with him. And having that spotter communication going to be extremely important as the run goes on. But Betafer, he's now in. So, knowing there's the contra strategy for his teammate in the Alpine Star geodesic machines, a lot to consider on that in that regard.
Here he goes. He's revving the engine, just waiting to get the instruction to go. And it's a pretty good pit stop. 9.3 seconds, a bit longer in terms of the stationary time. But cone to cone, it's worked out decently. He's just not going to have the speed. You'll see the drivers blast the driver's left-hand side. Canapino's gone, but Blocker not going to get through. So Betafer net +1 then. He's jumped up to what will be third, at least hypothetically. It's all the sense now. On to Phil Kraus, at most 2 laps away from coming down to pit lane.
First of all, let me correct myself. Hydro Race Geodesic. Rebrands are fun.
Oh, no, don't worry. I got that one long for a very, very long time.
I get messages anytime I say that wrong. Second, I will note a comment from some of those watching along. Kraus, so far, you can argue, has built a villa for his strategy. He is 3/10 quicker than his teammate right now. Kraus is looking like he's going to be difficult to stop, while Connor Harrington, you have to wonder what is going on with Harrington.
He is still in a position, I think, where he's more fighting about with John Betafer and Adam Blocker. He's on the button. Let's not forget that. He's still got 7 usages left, as do Betafer and Blocker, I should point out, as we focus back on them. Track limits, reasonable. At least they're not 4 wheels to the outside of the white lines, which is probably the only reasonable thing that we can think about. Now, Canapino, once again, start of the stint, Canapino seems to really be able to get the most from the tires. 3.3 seconds the margin between these drivers now in this fight, and look at how Blocker's closing with the push to pass, but Betafer on the button in defense as well. Long way around for the bright blue machine, but the gold and black entry down low trying to defend, and this is where the fresh tires will actually help just that little bit more in giving us a fight through the chicane. Betafer still there, going to force Blocker to really commit to the AstroTurf that's on the outside. He'll finally get the inside into the second chicane.
This is working exactly to the treat of Phil Kraus, though. These two have really cost themselves time. You know something else I've also noticed there, Judah? Not sure if you noticed this too. Those drivers on the Blackwell tires are running slower than those on the Ward tires, with them still getting up to full temperature. Canapino has lost about a second since the pit stop, at least, the past 2 laps.
I think part of that maybe is also just the fuel load as well, as I think we're going to get the first takers down onto pit lane when it comes to the primary tire. It is going to be 16 laps complete, so clearly Kevin Burrell, Rob Malechka, Mitch Welker, they think that JP, they can get enough life in the tire out of the alternates from here.
I think that was around the same time where we've seen the cliffing point really strike before, so not a surprise to see, I think, Malechka pick up on that from what he's seen with the power slide machines. Burrell, eventually he's going to have to use more than what he's got to push to pass here. I think right now these drivers, though, are in prime position to try and pounce. Canapino and company obviously cycling on by, but Burrell, what a jump. Able to jump Blocker and Betafer with that fight.
And this is where, being on the alternates, it will take less time for his tires to come up to temperature. He still has to go through the process, though, through the work. Blocker with that confidence, tires already where they need to be. And not just Blocker, Betafer as well. Now Burrell, a battle of the bees, all now finding themselves very much having to recognize that if they fight hammer and tongs, Connor Harrington's going to be well down the road. Connor Harrington may even be thinking he'll catch Augustin Canapino on his pit cycle.
Yeah, once again, those tires, fresh blacks, have just absolutely fallen off. I mean, rather, they haven't even picked up yet. For Kraus and company, got the great cushion, but now this is going to be the true test. Kraus did pick up at least 2-3 seconds to Canapino on track, or with a one cycle.
We'll keep an eye on both of their onboards as Kraus hits his marks in a great spot for him as well, hidden behind the pit wall for us as we see the other drivers into the lane. No one's going to really go beyond 17 laps. There's no realistic chance of that. Kraus is going to be off of the button and already gone, and as much as Canapino will use the 60 to 70 horsepower that a push to pass will give you down the straight, that's a margin that is upwards of 5 full seconds. Watch on the bottom of your screen. Where's Connor Harrington in relation to Agustin Canapino? He's jumped him. Private label team hype, new liveries, and 1 and 2 at Mugello.
Yeah, those cold, tired black wall tires just do not have the pace they need. For reference, the Reds, for some of those who started earlier on, 127.5s. For those who started on the blacks to begin the race, they got as fast as the 127.7s to 9s. Now that Canapino's tires at least have heated up, he's picked back up some of the tempo, but that warm-up period has absolutely cost some of these drivers.
Look how painful it is for Harrington as well. Already 6/10 for Canapino as through the double right-hander, still not up to temperature just yet. These are the unique things that, of course, these compound switches really bring to this type of racing and why we enjoy it so much, why there is so much strategy. Haven't had a particularly, haven't had too many issues so far today. Lucas Lodato, Will Weiser, well, commentators curse strikes.
Well, what did I just say? Tire cycle difference is going to be a huge factor now, and I think that might have struck at least there. Unfortunate for those two, that was our first crash of the entire race, by the way.
And here's a look at what happened. I'm thinking with drivers just coming out of the pits as well, and the 15 is on the grass, so that's Will Weiser, and I don't think Lodato could really have done much to avoid that.
Yeah, just quite simply, car on the left side clips the left side tires in the sand, as you've seen, and by race car right across the racetrack. Lucas Lodato going to be absolutely disappointed. Just was trying to run his own race in the Bearcat Motorsports machine, and unfortunately he becomes his own bug on the windshield.
Well, I think Phil Kraus has not just built a villa here at Mugello, he's built a new postcode. He is 8 seconds clear of those behind. He had figured out that strategy and executed it to perfection. Left side shows you 3 drivers on the primaries in the second phase of the race. Canapino second, Blocker 4th, and Baderfer in 5th. And right now as it sits, JP, basically 2nd through 7th spot, half a second to second between each of the contenders.
I think this was maybe part of the thought process on trying the alternate strategy, see if they could overcome Kraus maybe, because they knew the pace was there on the Alts. The problem is the Alts pace is going to be not easy to stop at all, because I'm looking at some of the times of those who already have completed stops. Those on those red wall tires right now, much quicker of a warm-up period by at least 2 laps right now compared to the primary.
And so you look at the moving back and forth, Canapino increasingly feeling the pressure from Connor Harrington, and Blocker now separated and not feeling and enjoying any sort of draft. And up towards turn 1 at San Donato they go once again. I mean, Canapino is really getting closed on down now by Harrington. The red tires are really going to feel stronger at the start now that they're warmed up. He thought about the lunge to the inside, but it was never really on.
Yeah, no real true space, but we already know Harrington can get very aggressive, and when he's already a second a lap faster, I don't know how much Harrington's going to have the patience down. Obviously, he knows if he tries to be over-aggressive, Canapino's not going to be afraid to say, thanks for the aggressive send, here's the sand. But Harrington, I think right now, it's just inedible. Just with how much quicker those red wall tires are in the corner. That's a car length and a half just on one lift. There's another car length on another lift. That's how big the tire grip is.
It's amazing, but you got to make the most of it, because if you do put too much energy into the tire, I think that's probably the right word to use, you can find it falling away. And I wonder if Blocker was actually just managing his own tires, and if Baderfer is the one that's more under pressure. Top of your screen, they'll look at Harrington to the inside, down to the final corner, a lunge. through the long left-hand sweeper. Private Label team back to 1 and 2, and Harrington not going to mess around. He's on the button once again. He's got 5 usages left, and he wants to try and build the gap. Canapino, in contrast, just 2 usages left, cannot afford to respond, and now has to watch into turn 1 as Harrington onto the brakes will hold the position. Badefer closed on by Burrell, but no pass into the opening corner.
Meanwhile, I think we can safely say Private Label Team Hype may have been trying to save him, keeping an eye on that interval too as you look at the battle for 5th and 6th here between Badefer and Burrell. Kraus is running a second quicker than the field. That's kind of called masking the speed until it's too late for anyone to know.
Well, you say that, but you know, it's not like he grabbed pole position. He has got a 1:26.314. That is the fastest lap of the race, but it goes to show race pace, Q pace, very different. And especially with this new iRacing weather system, I think part of what we are still trying to understand is how it's going to end up impacting on the dynamic even of races where we're not going to see rain, because you're still seeing changes. We saw that at Auto Club last time we went racing on Monday night, so still plenty to figure out. And JP, we're coming off, of course, 12 hours of Sebring, plenty of chaos across of the 12 hours of competition. I can only imagine what this race would have been like if we added rain into the mix as well.
Yeah, I'm not even quite sure how this car would handle with a rainstorm right now for this field, because not sure if anyone would really expect that right now. For one, it's 0% forecast, but 2, one thing I have noticed though, especially when it comes to when it's a hotter racetrack, Arjuna, when the sun is out, one thing that always been a nitpick to me is iRacing temperatures being 10 to 20 degrees lower when the sun was on the track compared to what it would be in real life every single week. When the sun is out, what used to be 76 degrees air temperature, around 90 degrees track temperatures, turned into 110, 120, like you would see in a real-world racing situation. I think with the hotter temps, it's more towards in line to the real-world way the track's metrics going. The cold track like this, where there's no sunshine to add to a circuit, I think that's still in the unknown, because there's the thought of, is the track building energy into it? Is it building rubber into it? Or better yet, is the track getting hotter at all? The average hasn't moved really at all since we started the race. That's a big difference compared to if the sun was fully out.
It's closing between Canapino and Blocker. It's down to 2 seconds or so, as the margin between Harrington and Canapino has grown to around that same buffer as well. We do seemingly have a couple of cars of traffic that we are working past as well, but into turn 1, Canapino able to slide through. Blocker not going to get that same opportunity, has to wait until they get out of that first chicane to be able to work his way through. We are in towards the final 7 laps of this race. Kraus's pace has started to fall off, which is at least good to see. We know that he's human, but at least when we talk to him at the conclusion of this race, we're going to have to figure out what they had ended up figuring out. And as I was saying as well, brand new liveries for the Private Label Team Hype. What do we think, JP? How are we rating them out of 10?
Well, I'll be honest, I didn't even realize they had new liveries until you said they have new liveries. I can see where the change is, where instead of standard ovals, you have, I think that's jaggedy lightning strike style lines.
I think the main difference is actually that it's now a black base in the middle, and there's not as much craziness going on, but looks quite good. And the thing that's helpful is they recognize that commentators are dumb, and so Phil Kraus is in pink, Connor Harrington is in blue, and if Jason Brophy was here, he will tell us that he's in a Grello machine, but we all know it's actually yellow. Anyway, that's just a shot fired at Jason Brophy for not being here as the Christmas tree lights up once again on the tower.
I was just about to say, though, I don't think I answered your question yet.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, the color part is still there from the previous paint schemes over the years. They still do it on the oval side, especially with the stock car divisions. 7 out of 10, is that fair to say?
I mean, you're going to now have to deal with more messages sent your way, it sounds like, JP. I didn't realize that you'd already had some for accidentally getting a team name wrong. Commentators aren't allowed to make a mistake. We're also not allowed to shout, apparently. We are held to very high standards.
Yes, don't you know that we're supposed to be perfect 100% of the time and make sure we, anytime, make mistakes, know exactly when to make mistakes and have fun with said mistakes. And if you aren't 100% fun, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit too much in my head. Where were we?
No, you were going down the path I was going to go down. 6 to go, will be 5 to go at the line.
Oh,
Canopy. Sorry, go ahead.
I was about to say, I found out what Jason Brophy ran. Instead, he ran the fixed SLF. He said he went and died in that instead.
Well, so the reason why I'm actually very disappointed in that is because tomorrow is another eNASCAR round. Jason Brophy is part of the team behind the scenes with the likes of Matt Busa and company. So we don't usually see him in Coke Race Suites. So what he's just said, I think, is he's gone and run IndyCar Fixed instead of coming and running IndyCar Open. To which I say, Jason, you had an OP setup, unacceptable, and we better, now in retaliation, whatever you want to say, we better see you next week at Sonoma. And I apologize in advance for making you do that, because Mugello's great, JP, in my opinion. I'm not such a good fan, a big fan of Sonoma, unfortunately.
I can understand the thoughts with the layout, especially when you're talking about the IndyCar side of things. NASCAR, after all, already has swapped in the recent years back to the short chute layout. But it is a racetrack that is, honestly, if I'm thinking about it right, hard to really get a pass down, because you know where the top spots are at Sonoma are in most air divisions. The hairpin heading towards the final couple corners, that's much shorter with the IndyCar layout in theory. And essentially the run out of the carousel with the IndyCar side, I don't even think that's the most realistic spot, because there's too much risk of getting contact in that section. In other words, it's about the strategy there, and so if you don't qualify well, it's a big task to win it.
Jason's just sent me a message, by the way, and I will say he is now excused. He's given me some good reasons, and we will allow him his absence. He's also said in our YouTube chat he's going to be here next week in Sonoma. He just unfortunately probably won't be top split. But you should join us for that one, because it will hopefully be quite fun. And I think Jason Brophy has a pretty decent chance of being a back marker for that race, which will also be equally entertaining. I mean, just look at how many drivers have banked push-to-passes for the end here, and it's all now stacking up for 6. Blocker's gone, Baderford's gone. Instead, Burrell, Malechka, Roseborough, and Karasala, 4 cars fighting for 6th.
This is just continuously getting aggressive again, because keep in mind, this is about points paying time, right? If you want to do well in the SOFs, you need to be able to pounce right now, and Kevin Burrell is now just in full defense mode. Robert Malechka, I think, might have the better chance here to make a move with the pace he showcased as of the past few laps. Roseborough, though, is pushing extremely hard at that backdrop.
Christian Steele says, by the way, Sonoma next week, NASCAR layout, relatively easy to get to grips with, so come and join us for that one. It won't be as much of a challenge, but it's undulating, so it's not going to be easy. Don't think that by any means. And I will just say, we've got a schedule that I'm really looking forward to after that. Texas is going to be quite curious to see how that goes. But then Long Beach, Barber, Richmond, Indy GP, Motegi, Indy Oval, and then Belle Isle. I mean, IndyCar staples thrown into the mix across 2024 Season 2's remaining races. Burrell's looking relatively comfortable. I feel like, if anything, it's going to be Malechka from Roseborough. Well, you might have to see some defense and some more passing.
Yeah, Roseborough, as I said, full on push, push, push. It's going to come down to how many push-to-passes are left, though, because it's a push-to-pass train. And right now, I think with their speed and the aerodynamic setup for these drivers, near dead even, no chances for Roseborough to try and make a pass unless he forces a mistake here.
Karasala, that Team Watson racing car, he thought about having a lob of his own as we sweep through back towards middle sector of the lap. After the chicanes, that's when the downforce comes into play. That's where, as well, dirty air equally becomes important to try and figure out. I mean, Roseborough's looking, he's showing himself in the mirrors out through Arrabbiata. Will it get spicy as we come back towards the final sector? We've got just 2 laps to go at the line. Phil Krause continues to lead by 12 and a bit seconds. And Augustin Canapino only now within 1.4 seconds of Connor Harrington. It's stalled out a little bit here at the end.
Yeah, same for Burrell, but this is right where we usually see these packs start to form. Curious though, once we get to the last lap, who's got pushed to pass his left? Because remember, a lot of these drivers, I think if I remember right, a lot more aggressive. There it is right there. This is why I'm a bit nervous here. Roseborough can't really defend for the final lap. He's down to push to pass. Karasawa's got an extra in the bank as well as Malechka. So if anything, the 7's on the back foot.
I mean, we've got how many? 7, 8 cars currently on the button right now. I mean, that's a lot of green flashing, but maybe the helpful part here for Roseborough is, like we were saying at the start, there's only one really long straight, and so therefore maybe one really obvious opportunity to take advantage of it. When you're so concertinaed up here, it can be hard to actually get the push to pass and use it to build an advantage through some of the shorter straights that we've still got. They'll have one more lap to go though at the line, and I will just highlight as well, as much as I've been saying Augustin Canapino's not close to the back of Connor Harrington, it's now down, it's closing, it's now down to 1 full second.
A little bit too late though. 4/10 a lap is solid, yes, but he needs Harrington to make a lot of mistakes to have a true chance to pounce here. He's just outside the full drafting range in theory. We've seen Canapino do wild things before here, but finding a full second of space here is going to be something that can be very tricky here. Canapino and Kraus just showing right now that those Red Bull tires falling off, and that's a problem.
Malechka mistake. Here comes the chance for Roseborough. Kraus is going to see the white flag. He's got one more lap here left at Mugello. Malechka holds the spot for the time being, but I mean, one more lap to go, and it shows how easy it could be to make the mistakes, and Karasala wants to take advantage. Out through the final corner, everyone using the push to pass now. One more lap to figure it out.
Carousel, I think, would prefer to get a pass done first because he's got that chance to use the button coming to the line in theory. Next time around, looking to try and get the send now so he can try and get a chance to battle with Malechka. But Roseborough, so solid on defense. Again, just got the grip to stick.
This has been a great race. It goes to show as well that it would be really fascinating to bring these Indy cars to some of these tracks where Formula One has raced in the past and see how the racing would develop for us in these Dallara IR18s. As mentioned though, not just this fight that continues to brew for 6th. Canapino's got close, but not close enough into the final sector. Still half a second the margin.
I think Harrington's in a prime position. Just play defense, just defend, ride where he needs to ride. This battle though, I think it's still up for grabs because Malechka third's already buzzed the right front tire on the lockup previous. He is right now just faded away as up front. It's time to build another house.
It's Phil Kraus that's on top once again. He'll win at Mugello and in dominant fashion by 13 full seconds to debut Private Label Team Hype's new vision for the future. Harrington second, Canapino third, but only by half a second or so. Or has Augustin Canapino run out of fuel? Adam Blocker will grab third, Canapino drops to fourth. Goodness gracious, what a finish, and Roseborough's dropped as well.
Yeah, he definitely ran out of gas. He's right now coasting it. I think we just got the reason why Canapino's pace dropped off for a bit in the early going. That number was going to be very tight because of that early push maybe.
He put in the same exact fuel as his teammate, however, maybe just a little bit more usage in terms of trying to chase and, well, change coming to the line. It's Phil Kraus, though. I mean, what a victory. We've seen him be consistently quick across the season. That's the type of raw, dominant pace I think it's going to be intriguing to see how it all plays out. The drivers are across the line. We'll hopefully get a word with them in a few moments' time, but let's go down, take a look at the race results, and then get our chance to catch up with the drivers. 1 and 2 for Private Label Team Hype. Kraus in front of Harrington, and then Blocker grabs valuable championship points and the third spot on the podium. Great to see Augustin Canapino join us after a top 10 in the non-points race at Thermal Club fourth for him in his Monday night debut, and then John Badeford for the HydroRace Geodesic Racing Team fifth. Kevin Burrell sixth, Robin Malechka seventh, and then Sam Carasala, Brandon Roseborough, and Mitch Welker, the rest of your top 10. Mitch Welker was seemingly on for a pretty decent run, but fell off slightly in the second part of the race. Brian Carey was able to stymie the bleeding to finish 11th in front of Alan Berteau, while Michael O'Brien, Brad Newman, and then Rashad Craig, along with Nick Sudik and Seb Alexander, all scored on the leading lap. Olivia Hayward, Lucas Lodato, and then Will Weiser round out the 20 cars that took to the starting grid. Only one DNF on the day, which goes to show that, JP, we only saw one crash, except for some drama on the final lap.
Yeah, pretty much a clean race, although I'm pretty sure that Brandon Roseborough isn't going to be sending roses towards the way of Carousel. That's all I will say in regards to the battle for 8th position. Outside of that, a pretty dominant run in the very end for Krause. He preserved the speed until it was time to show his hand, and well, he showed he was hiding a rocket ship.
We are still waiting for Phil Krause to exit the car and to come join us from victory lane. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and join Connor Harrington second here at Mugello. And a second place that I think, Connor, might be somewhat of a surprise. I don't know if you necessarily love this track, let's be honest.
Yeah, oh my God. Yeah, definitely starting this week or this weekend, I was terrified. I thought I was destined for like a 10th place finish. But yeah, it was a really crazy race, and the strategy just worked out in our favor. And yeah, I mean, obviously really cool to edge ahead there of Canapino there at the end. That's really cool, and that was a fun race, and he drove me really clean, and that was a lot of fun. So that was really great.
In terms of the track, though, are you a fan now at least, just because of the second place finish?
Well,
come on, be honest.
I'll tell you, it's fun until you get to like turn 10 and 11, and then I'm kind of just like, ugh. And I hate turns 2 and 3. But it's fun, and I could definitely see how, like, if you really had a car that had some serious downforce here, it'd be really, really fun to drive. And I think what made the race really good was how hard the reds fell off. And how the black tires kind of came into their own there at the end. But 5 out of 10. It's not in the front to human decency, but it's not my favorite, but it's not that bad.
Okay, well, if that's your rating for Mugello, what do you think our rating of your new livery is? Of course, debuting the brand new look for the private label Team Hype. Yeah,
I know it's been a kind of a crazy offseason. We're obviously so glad to be back. With broadcasted racing again, especially on RaceSpot. We've picked up a couple new sponsors, Gravity headsets. Use code PLTH for 5% off. Sorry, I got to get that plug in. And obviously racing radios. And I can't thank Cosman Ionescu enough at Splash and Go for the work he did. And it was, I give it 10 out of 10. Cosman's great. So definitely support him, and he does a great job with everything that he seems to put brush to canvas too. So can't thank him enough again.
We'll make you go watch the broadcast to find our rating. Connor Harrington second in this race at Mugello. We'll make our way to victory lane there, where Phil Krause is finally standing by. Phil, domination out there. Did you think you were going to win by that much?
I don't know if domination's the right word. It was a strategy race between us at PLTH and then the duo of Augustin and Adam. But yeah, I saw that as we were building up to the grid that Augustin was planning on starting on the reds. So I knew I had to do something different to that, because I mean he waxed all of us in qualifying. But I did a full run of practice before the race. I want to say Sunday night, and the primes really came into their own element near the end of the run. But that was a lot hotter weather than we ended up racing, and so I wasn't sure if it'd be the same thing again. But luckily that played into our hand, and it was the same thing again. And the primes at the end of the stint were absolutely amazing to drive on. And once Adam and Augustin's their reds fell off around lap 10 or so, I was able to really start making moves and make time.
Yeah, we're talking a little bit about how, the iRacing weather system has changed, how the conditions actually are generated for our races, even if there isn't rain. Are you guys finding that it's a little bit cooler week on week than you've been practicing in? Is that going to slightly impact how you build your setups and do the testing and development for them?
I wouldn't say it's always cooler. Sometimes it is warmer. There's some tracks that have a lot bigger variance on the forecast. This one generally tended to generate really cold and really cloudy, but I wanted to be safe, so I was testing in partly cloudy and like, I don't know, 15 degrees hotter than we ended up having on the track today, just to be safe, because it's a lot easier to adapt to a cold track than it is to a hot track.
So you built a villa here at Mugello. Are you going to build now another villa in wine country next week when we head over to Sonoma?
We'll have to see. I've barely ever run that track in iRacing. I enjoy it, but it just never really comes around. And I'm looking forward to it for sure. I didn't get to run it last time the IndyCar went here, so we'll have to see for sure. But you know what'd be cool, Arjuna?
What?
If we had a scan of Sonoma that had the grass.
Yeah, but that would be a fake scan because it only exists for 1 day a year. Hypothetically.
You're right. We can't have fake scans.
Can't have fake scans. Congratulations, Phil. What a win it was. And on strategy, you say, but 13 and a bit seconds, domination at the end of the day.
Cheers, Arjuna.
Phil Kraus in first position, and we'll make a stop down to third to chat with Adam Blocker after getting to the final spot on the podium on the run towards the line. Adam, talk us through our first race here at Mugello. Maybe caught out a little bit on strategy. Did you think it would work out like that?
To be honest, yeah, we thought that the Reds would be the better tire with how cold the conditions were. Clearly, we were not right about that. So yeah, Augusta and I started on Reds, and you know, we just fell off too fast in the first stint, and from there it was really a struggle. You know, I had to keep John behind me, and then I think we had to pit as early as we could because we were struggling on Reds, but that just meant that we got overcut by everybody because the Blacks had a long warm-up. So then I had to pass John and Kevin on track, and so yeah, we just lost a lot of time doing all that. So not ideal, but Phil and Connor were definitely pretty fast still. You know, I think Phil was probably the fastest either way. So
you've of course just come from Thermo Club. One thing I said at some point during the race today, Adam, was, you know, there was some conversation from drivers and I think engineers at some point that, you know, it would be great to do a race where there was a Joker lap. I'm just saying, Mugello, we've got a built-in Joker lap. Would you want to see IndyCar come here in the real world? Did you think it raced well from your perspective behind the virtual cockpit?
I mean, I didn't think there was going to be any passing, and I mean, I passed Phil, got passed by Phil, and I passed John and Kevin on his outlap, and there was some passing behind me too, so I think it was a pretty good race, to be honest. Yeah, and it's a really fun track to drive, really high commitment, and it was a challenge to set up for, so it was pretty fun.
We had fun, that is for sure. Congratulations, Adam, on third, and hopefully we'll see you next week as we make our way over to Sonoma.
Yep, I love that place, so looking forward to Sonoma. See y'all then.
Interesting to hear that many drivers seem to love racing at Sonoma. I'm hoping that we get a good race because, JP, let's be honest, this was a good one. I know Adam wasn't sure. I loved it.
Yeah, it was a pretty exciting race. Hard to pass, yes, but it was a solid race as a whole. No major attrition points outside of 2 incidents total. Can confirm, looking at the layout, it's NASCAR lawn, which means good news. We got a tire barrier as a braking zone for the hairpin. Bad news. Good chance drivers get sent into the tire barrier. Also, I will say this. Technically, we do need a new Sonoma scan because they finished the repave today.
Good
also,
point.
There's no more tower out of turn 10.
No, that's a good point. We do technically need a new scan, especially given that not just Sonoma, but Laguna as well. You know, they've got a brand new tarmac, and that's, of course, you know, tire wear has been a factor at these tracks in the past. Not going to be something that we necessarily are going to be talking about, the track resurfacing. I mentioned as well, what a schedule that we've got lined up ahead of us, JP. After Sonoma, back to the ovals for the first time in a couple of weeks as we head to Texas, and hopefully we can get that upper groove working nicely. Long Beach to end the first half of the season as we get back on form and on schedule with the NTT IndyCar Series, and then all is building towards the month of May.
Yeah, that month of May going to be exciting with, of course, Indianapolis with the iRacing Indy 500, in theory making a triumphant return soon. You also have Twin Wing Motegi, though. That's going to be a solid stretch for the closing run. Very curious about the Belle Isle finale because we still don't have the return to Detroit layout. And that's obviously a big difference compared to Belle Isle. We'll have to see how the rest of the season fares out, though, with this good combination of oval, road course, oval, oval, I'm mixing up my words.
I don't think we're complaining necessarily, though, that we get to keep Belle Isle in rotation here in the virtual world. The great thing about sim racing is that we can preserve those great tracks that, for one reason or another, no longer exist out there in the real world. But Mugello plays host to a relatively entertaining round of the iRacing IndyCar Open Series, and we will be back in 7 days' time from wine country, from the rolling Sonoma Raceway, to get the action back underway. For the team behind the scenes, thank you so much for joining us. JP, Justin Prince, alongside myself, Arjuna Kankiparty, signing off once more. Enjoy the rest of your iRacing week.